dream world time dilation, zombies by way of music video, and so many baby carriages. Slow motion has been around since the beginning of filmmaking, but these scenes are proof that some moments just shouldn't be watched in real time. The Matrix has only grown in popularity since its release in 1999. Not easy since it was already a phenomenon upon its release, as the red pill, blue pill metaphor has become a cultural touchstone in ways both profound and troubling. But the film's pioneering use of slow motion perhaps is what has most contributed to its influence. The Wachowskis leaned in with their otherworldly tale of false realities and very real threats, making better use of slow motion than just about anyone before or since. From the famous bullet time sway, surely one of the defining moments of 90s sci-fi cinema, to Neo's minigun attack, to all those balletic fight scenes with Agent Smith. All are memorable yet pale in comparison to the original film's trademark scene, slow mode, so audiences could appreciate every nuance of its choreography. The lobby shootout. Wall running, exploding pillars, nonchalant gun tossing. By now, any fan of pop culture knows it well. You may even be able to play it frame by frame in your head. After all, it's a scene that was binged on VHS and DVD players long before the term was coined in a streaming service context. While being interviewed about Kill Bill in 2003, Quentin Tarantino left fans with a soundbite they'll never forget.
Why the need for so much gruesome, graphic violence? Why not let us imagine
Because it's so much fun, Jan. Get it?
Nearly a decade later, Tarantino reminded viewers of the gruesome, graphic violence he's known for via Django Unchained, a 3-hour extravaganza of bloodshed and heroic vengeance. In the final act of the film, fed up with all he has lived and endured, Django returns to Candyland Plantation Mansion, masterfully wielding a pair of Colt revolvers while spraying blood and innards all over the splendid colonial architecture. Django's enemies desperately fire at him, shattering glass and splintering wood as the exchange turns into a slow-mo bloodbath of epic proportions. It's a thunderous piece of filmmaking, one that indulges cathartic violence with striking self-confidence. A beautiful film about ugly people, this early Edward Norton flick put him on the map with an Oscar nomination, and its slick style reflects the aesthetic of talented, troubled director Tony Kaye, who got a start in advertising. The infamous curb stomp scene is perhaps so effective and vividly remembered today because of Kaye's dramatic use of slow motion. As Danny, played by Edward Furlong, falls to his knees in horror at what his brother Derek has just done, we see a slow motion close-up of Derek's smug expression, clearly indifferent to the repulsive injury he just inflicted. Slow motion has the power to emphasize the beautiful and the abhorrent, the funny and the frightening, and the best directors know when and when not to use it. Many admired the film, still considered to be among the best of the 1990s. However, some critics did not appreciate Kaye's aesthetic sensibility. Manohla Dargis of LA Weekly wrote, "The problem is that Kaye, who's used to selling cars on TV, shoots Derek the Hater as lovingly as he would a new Volkswagen." The Terminator was a tough act to follow, but after some 7 years, James Cameron went above and beyond with Terminator 2 Judgment Day, using cutting-edge CGI, a nuanced script, and some iconic slow-motion inflected action sequences. Arnold Schwarzenegger reinforced the T-800 as his most iconic character early in the film. Clad in bike leathers, he strides through a mall carrying a box of roses under his arm as he scans the area. The T-800 is not looking for his Valentine. He's looking for John Connor, the savior of humanity he is assigned to protect. And the rose box is not a romantic gesture, but rather a tool for concealing his lever-action Winchester shotgun. All of this is revealed to us in an icy cool slow-mo sequence as the T-800 locks, loads, and blows several holes into his malleable nemesis, the T-1000, played by a sinister Robert Patrick.
As we walked along the flat block marina, I was calm on the outside, but thinking all the time.
The flat block marina scene in A Clockwork Orange ranks among the most famous uses of slow motion in both Stanley Kubrick's career and wider cinematic history. Shot on a grimy estate in Thamesmead, southeast London, the sight of Alex DeLarge thrashing, kicking, and cutting his droogs is scored by Rossellini's Thieving Magpie, which gives the scene a dark elegance as he reasserts his alpha male status. The psychopathic charm of Alex, played by Malcolm McDowell, stirred a great deal of controversy in the United Kingdom, with the press alleging a series of copycat crimes. Kubrick consequently withdrew the film from UK cinemas and eventually all home media. The ban was revoked 27 years later, following Kubrick's death in the spring of 2000. Kubrick employed slow motion in several other films, most notably the Dawn of Man sequence in 2001: A Space Odyssey and the bloody elevator nightmare of The Shining. One of the most arresting openings in cinematic history, Francis Ford Coppola's use of slow motion in the introduction to Apocalypse Now has left a lasting mark on popular culture. Walter Murch, the editor of Apocalypse Now, explained, "At that time, it was the biggest explosion ever staged for a film. In fact, it probably is still the biggest because now you would do that explosion digitally." The scene's grand staging is symbolic of the film's infamous production, which was a 238-day ordeal of drugs, set-destroying typhoons, actual real combat from Filipino insurgents, and medical emergencies as depicted in the documentary Hearts of Darkness. Coppola even staked his California estate to fund the film, which wound up costing over $30 million, reportedly some $18 million more than the director had expected. It's hard to locate the best use of slow motion in John Woo's 1992 masterpiece Hard Boiled, because the entire film is essentially one massive action sequence, complete with some of the finest stylized violence in world cinema history. There are three highlights: the opening tea house shootout, the warehouse shootout, and the climactic hospital shootout, which lasts for about a half an hour. There's a notable skirmish on a dock too. Each sequence is full of truly promiscuous use of slow-mo, with Chow Yun-fat taking out the trash in bloody, balletic fashion, his enemies almost pirouetting as he blasts them with a small arsenal of firearms. This level of stylized violence may sound distasteful, but Woo's films are far removed from reality, and his inspirations are fanciful. He told The Guardian in 2001, "I was very influenced by musicals like Singin' in the Rain and West Side Story, and dancers like Fred Astaire and Gene Kelly. They have the rhythm of life. I shoot action scenes just as though they were dance sequences. I love ballet. I love dancing." Inspired by the 2000 AD comics, Dredd is a film in which slow motion is actually a plot point. Set in Mega City 1, a grimy place stretching from Boston to Washington, D.C., the world of Dredd is a police state racked by crime and addiction, and the drug of choice is a sedative called slow-mo. Administered by an inhaler, the drug slows users' sense of time with immediate, drastic effect, sending them into a surreal, hypnotic state in which everything occurs at a fraction of its normal pace. We experience their altered consciousness with many ultra-slow motion sequences, which were all shot on phantom cameras at 4,000 frames per second, according to special effects supervisor Max Pullman. The photography is at its most ghoulishly dazzling when Dredd throws Mama, the lead villain, hundreds of feet to her death. Before he administers his summary justice, he has Mama take a hit of slow-mo, the very drug she has been guilty of dealing.
Defense noted.
I am an exceptional thief, Mrs. McLean, and since I'm moving up to kidnapping, you should be more polite.
After receiving a bullet from John McClane's gun, Hans Gruber falls through a window of Nakatomi Plaza. Then, after a tense struggle to release his grip from Holly McClane's wristwatch, he falls to his death hundreds of feet below. Hans' death in Die Hard has aged very well, especially when compared to RoboCop, which was released just a year prior. In RoboCop, the villain falls from a skyscraper in real time using Harryhausen-style stop-motion effects, undermining the scene's impact for a modern viewer. Through green screen and slow motion, Die Hard had no such problems. Suspended from a wooden frame in a California studio, Alan Rickman dropped some 40 feet onto an airbag. But perhaps the most inspired idea came from stunt coordinator Charlie Pacherny, who told Rickman he would be released on a 3 count, then dropped him early, minting that unique look of horror and surprise on the actor's face. The slow-motion IED detonation in Catherine Bigelow's The Hurt Locker featured heavily in promotional materials for the film, and with good reason. The scene combines documentary realism with an attention to detail that's stylized, yet not at all aestheticized. Instead of achieving some kind of kick-ass sensibility, the scene highlights the sickening danger faced by bomb disposal units. We see how the sudden release of energy tears through the immediate surroundings, rocking everything in its path. As always, there have been detractors, and not unreasonable ones either. Speaking with NPR, Iraq veteran Paul Rykov said, "Very seldom is a guy going to put on a bomb suit and walk down there and try and dismantle something by hand." He continued, "It just doesn't make sense. For the most part, they're going to use robotics. They're going to use other types of explosives to set off a charge, a controlled charge next to it. It's really a Hollywood sensationalized version of how EOD operate. So maybe The Hurt Locker isn't quite as realistic as many believed it to be. But its use of slow motion? Undoubtedly impressive, thanks to the use of multiple Eaton S16mm cameras and a director with a knack for nerve-shredding action. Raging Bull features Martin Scorsese's most powerful use of slow motion, and he uses it to convey metaphor, personality, and sheer brutality. The first instance is the film's opening, which shows Jake LaMotta shadow boxing alone in the ring, as Mazgani's intermezzo plays. This is a gorgeous shot, but it is also a metaphor for LaMotta's vicious demons which isolate and destroy him. Slow motion is used again to convey LaMotta's jealousy in a social situation, slowing the frame just slightly as the boxer leers at the men schmoozing with his partner Vicky. Lastly, and perhaps most notably, Scorsese employs slow-mo to emphasize the head-bashing brutality of LaMotta's profession, the sport of boxing in the 1940s, an era of bi-weekly matches and 15-round bouts. Perhaps the defining moment of Scorsese's slow-motion, expressionistic style comes in the final fight between LaMotta and Sugar Ray Robinson, which sees LaMotta take a merciless beating. After the ref stops the fight, a defiant LaMotta approaches Robinson, the frame rate slowed, and says, with his face beaten to a bloody pulp,
"You never got me down, Ray. You hear me? Never got me down."
No slow-motion list is complete, of course, without a nod to the early 80s cultural phenomenon that was Chariots of Fire, the 1981 Olympic drama best remembered for a shot that almost single-handedly won it the Oscar for Best Picture. The opening's subtle use of slow motion complements the rousing Vangelis score, making such an impression that the film became a widely imitated icon of popular culture. Some 40 years later, it's still impossible to imagine anyone running in slow motion without the film's theme playing behind them. In 2012, director Hugh Hudson explained the film's appeal to The Guardian, saying, "Everybody remembers the opening jogging scene along the beach. It was key to establishing character. Harold Abraham's gaunt and determined, Eric Liddell, Scottish, blonde, open and free, Aubrey Montague, the amiable, faithful old dog, Lord Andrew Lindsay, the aristocrat, running for the fun of it." Brian De Palma's classic 1976 adaptation of the Stephen King novel remains unequaled despite the occasional unnecessary attempt to remake a movie that was perfectly good the first time around. He utilized slow motion in the opening locker room sequence to lull the audience into a false sense of security via sexualized voyeurism, which takes a sudden turn when Carrie discovers she's having her first period and thinks she's sick or dying, having never been educated about menstruation by her overbearing mother. Her cries for help are mocked cruelly by her peers, and as she lies humiliated on the shower floor, we see the first glimpse of her telekinetic power in an exploding bulb. In many ways, this scene is a lot like the climax, when Carrie is crowned the prom queen. Slow motion gives the scene its emotional resonance, appropriate for the heightened feelings and sense of significance in the high school world. It only would have been a few seconds of real time, but we dwell on Carrie's long moment of pride and happiness, the leering anticipation of those who scheme against her, the mounting suspicion of her friend Sue, the fall of the bucket of pig's blood, and finally, Carrie's confusion and humiliation as she looks over the sea of mocking, laughing faces. For Carrie, this is the moment of true horror, a moment De Palma executes perfectly. Then, of course, time catches up with us as Carrie unleashes her telekinetic revenge upon those who tormented her, portrayed by De Palma with the now little-used split-screen technique and sharp and reaction shots of actress Sissy Spacek. This wonderful contrast gives us the feeling the game has changed. What would have been a completely chaotic scene overall if shot in real time is instead allowed to linger for the audience to truly understand Carrie.
People would think I was known for slow motion. I like slow motion. I don't really like slow motion that much.
Zack Snyder himself may not think so, but he is notorious for his slow motion shots, and it does get a bit gratuitous at times. He's long been enamored with the technique known as speed ramping, in which the camera speed goes slow, then fast, then slow again. Undoubtedly cool when he first started using it, but now you're left with the impression the man just likes slow motion because it makes things look cool. Still, there's one use of slow motion by Snyder we think was incredibly appropriate, and it may not be what you think. While slow motion showed up plenty in Watchmen, it was to be expected from Snyder in the action sequences, and tastefully used for world building in the intro. But it's the slow motion used in the scene of the comedian's death that's most significant. While the film scene was much more elaborate and superhero-y than in the original comic, the The lingering death shot as the comedian is tossed out of the window is an appropriate reflection of its significance in the graphic novel. This killing was the catalyst for everything that was to come in the graphic novel's universe, the central moment around which the narrative was spun. This wasn't merely a stylistic choice. It had narrative weight, and it was well done. One of the most influential slow-motion scenes in film history comes during Arthur Penn's 1967 film Bonnie and Clyde, in which the eponymous anti-heroes are cut down in an ambush by law enforcement. Penn opted to film the bloody end to the protagonists in slow motion to install a balletic quality to their deaths, something little seen to that point, but frequently imitated afterward. Penn and his crew captured the scene on 4 different cameras running at different speeds and used rapid cutting in the editing room to create a dreamlike but realistic sequence in which time becomes elastic. This was perhaps the first use of a combination of slow motion, multi-camera filming, and montage editing by an American director. The results speak for themselves, creating a shocking montage of emotions: suspicion, confusion, obliviousness, realization, and horror, followed by violent death and a slow lingering over the aftermath. In an interview with NPR, Penn would go on to say the scene was influenced by media reports and images of the Vietnam War. He also said the intention was to get this kind of spastic motion of genuine violence, and at the same time, the attenuation of time that one experiences when you see something like a terrible automobile accident. Sure, there's a lot more going on in the scene than just slow motion. The direction, acting, editing, and special effects flow together to create a scene that would influence American cinema for decades to come. Despite being a miserable failure at the box office and almost universally hated by critics, the Boondock Saints made millions in video and DVD sales as a cult classic. How can we explain this? Perhaps the single biggest point in favor of the film is the frenzied, bewildering performance of Willem Dafoe as the flamboyant FBI agent pursuing 2 twin vigilantes. Sure, he relentlessly chews every scene he's in. Sure, he plays a character so bizarrely stereotypical, he manages to come out the other side as completely unique, but it works. And this can best be seen in the scene oft referred to by the line, "There was a firefight!" The slow motion in the scene is completely gratuitous and dumb, but paired with Dafoe's narrative speech, his deranged dancing, and the orchestral score, the scene takes on an almost beautiful, folklorish quality. Is it dumb and is the slow motion unnecessary? Yes, and probably, but it'll live through the ages. While slow motion is often used to build tension or create beauty in action films, Inception is one of the few examples where it actually has an in-universe justification to go along with the explanation of "it just looks cool." One of the key plot points in the film is the aspect of time dilation between levels of the dream world, with each layer down operating 20 times faster than the one above. This is most obvious in the scene which flashes between the unconscious dream operatives in a van crashing into the water, while Joseph Gordon-Levitt fights assassins in a hallway, and the rest of the team escapes a snow fortress. The use of slow motion and extreme slow motion is justified not only by the style, but also by the substance of the story, a rare treat. It was no easy feat either. The van's slow descent took months of filming, which involved the actors breathing underwater through scuba gear and maintaining composure while sinking into the water, as well as shooting the van off the bridge with a cannon. Inception came out in a period when slow motion was almost overused in the post-Matrix, early Snyder world. It's a testament to Christopher Nolan's craft that he was able to use such a dated technique and elevate it by having the effect serve the narrative rather than the other way around. In an interview with KCRW, Nolan admitted to having never really used slow motion before, as it seemed a purely aesthetic choice and he couldn't figure out what it really meant. With Inception, he found a way of taking editing techniques he enjoyed and incorporating them as a literal part of the story universe. David Fincher isn't a director who likes to overindulge in slow motion, but he used it with panache in Panic Room. In this scene, Meg Altman leaves the safety of her panic room to make a dash to grab her cell phone while her would-be abductors are bickering downstairs. The scene is shot in slow motion with a minimalistic musical score, both of which flow together to enhance the feeling of urgency and danger. In a situation like that, it would seem so hard to move fast enough, and seeing Meg's desperation in slow motion like she's fighting through danger as it lurks nearby ratchets up the tension and suspense. Shot in real time, you would expect this scene to feature a lot of quick cuts and a frenetic score. Fincher's choice to go slow helps the audience absorb the nuance and detail of the scene and truly feel her panicked fear, which is exactly what you want in a thriller, really. Setting the rules for a zombie universe or a horror comedy is important, so you may as well do it with some style. Ruben Fleischer, a first-time feature filmmaker when he directed Zombieland, was thrilled by the opening sequence as a montage in the script and hoped to visually develop it further. Luckily, the production had access to a phantom digital camera able to capture 1,000 frames per second. The slow motion allowed the production to give the death and gore a kind of beauty along with the world building, making it one of the more entertaining opening credit sequences. The use of Metallica's For Whom the Bell Tolls works so well it's uncanny. It's easy to be skeptical of a director like Fleischer with his history in music videos, and the sequence could be seen as overly stylized, but it packs a punch and helps to set the tone for the rest of the movie, which can never be accused of taking itself too seriously.
Oh my God, look! It's disgruntled postal workers!
There's nothing quite like a baby carriage falling down a flight of stairs to create the feeling of, oh God, no, that slow motion is best applied to. So when our old friend Brian De Palma employed it in his 1986 film The Untouchables, it made perfect sense. Mobsters shooting each other up in the middle of Union Station while a baby pram teeters toward doom is a no-brainer for the slow-mo treatment. And when combined with De Palma's eye for tension and precise camera work and editing, it becomes an instant classic. There's more to the story though. The inspiration for the scene was undoubtedly the 1925 Soviet propaganda film, The Battleship Potemkin. There, director Sergei Eisenstein didn't actually use slow motion, but rather a series of rapid cuts away from the wheel of the baby carriage teetering over the edge of the step, fooling the viewer into thinking the scene is happening at half speed. The scene would be played for laughs in Naked Gun 33 1/3 when Leslie Nielsen fails to save 4 baby carriages toppling down the stairs. It just goes to show you whether you're making Soviet propaganda, a gritty crime drama, or an absurd satire. If you push a baby down the stairs, you have to show it slowly. Wes Anderson has a highly distinctive style, notable for quirky themes, recurring cast members, symmetrical and POV shots, retro soundtracks, and fearless exploration of the color palette. Slow motion is a technique Anderson's returned to repeatedly, particularly in scenes where his characters are walking. This gives Anderson as director great control and precision over the scene and imparts emotional depth and pathos. In the hands of a lesser director, it would be corny, but Anderson makes it his thing. Anderson often uses slow motion to indicate a change in a character's mindset or perspective, as in the funeral scene in the Darjeeling Limited, or the meeting of siblings Richie and Margot in the Royal Tenenbaums. The use of slow motion to deepen theme and meaning is deliberate and controlled, and in Anderson's hands, it's memorably successful. His understanding of the rhythm of scenes helps him make use of slow motion with great care, so as not to eject the viewer out of the film. In fact, he often uses it at the beginning or end of his films to allow the audience to release emotional tension and signify a closure or character development. Check out one of our newest videos right here. Plus, even more Looper videos about your favorite movies are coming soon. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you don't miss a single one.